If you've ever eaten out at Chinese restaurants, you've most likely had chow mein. In this case, it's a Cantonese dish, noodles, some vegetables, fairly simple, but I'm going to teach you how to make it at home. It's actually going to be 150,000 times better than you've had there, way less oily. If you see on my ingredient list, I've added some alternatives here. The idea is I don't want to have to go out to the grocery store and buy $20 worth of stuff every time I want to have just a simple meal. And so these are some things you can use that you'll most likely already have lying around at home. And that way you can keep the similar flavor profile. Don't forget, by the way, wash your hands. Tactical soap in the corner here. First part is we're going to take these noodles and boil them until they're just about done. The idea is we're still going to have to finish them with the chow mein sauce that we're going to make afterwards. Topic at hand. If you're going to be in a relationship, you should really know how to function in one. Now, I know a lot of guys love to brag about how tough they are, what they wouldn't put up with, and how they would ditch their woman for the slightest inconvenience. But anyone with any experience knows it's not how it works. There is multiple roadside checkpoints between relationship-ending boundary breaks and sexual pleasant feel. The point here is to learn how to pass those checkpoints without sabotaging your wonderful joyride that we call a healthy relationship. So let's pull over and have a quick primer on your tools you can use to navigate a healthy relationship with a little bit of emotional intelligence. Now, if you've been paying attention to this channel, and if you haven't, click subscribe, hit the bell icon, get your notifications. I say there's only 3 tools that you have to enforce your boundaries. You have your attention, you have your affection, and you have your commitment. Understandably, a few people have been curious. How do I use these tools? How do I pull my affection in order to enforce these tools? Well, here's one way. It's called Agree and Amplify. It's one of a few. Now, if you've not heard of them, we've also got Amuse Mastery, Fogging, Pressure Flips. Though right now, I'm focused on Agree and Amplify. I want you to close your eyes and picture this scenario. Wait. Don't close your eyes. Gotta kind of watch the video here, but picture this. You're sitting there with your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, whatever. You're having some conversation about whatever it is that you two talk about, and then out of the blue, you're getting accused of something. You never take her out anymore, except for those times you do. You've always done this thing that you've never done before. You never take my side in this thing that you've never heard of. To you, it's completely irrational. It makes no sense, or it's downright lies. Damn dirty lies. Here's what's important. For your girl, she has an emotional state, and everything flows from that. You never took her out anymore comes from a thought process similar to this. She wanted to go out. Maybe a friend from work told her, whatever. You say no. Emotionally, something clicks in her head. Maybe she's too tired to cook. Maybe she's showing off in front of her friends and really wanted to go out. Whatever. Save a little bit of this liquid, by the way, because you're going to melt the sauce that you create afterwards here. Put the noodles in the strainer, leave them be. They're going to stick together a bit, but we can fix that up afterwards. It's part of the recipe. Now, in this case, since we're replacing Chinese chives with bok choy, we're going to cut the leaves, which have a similar flavor profile and mouthfeel, and use those in their place. Same thing with the onions. Normally you would use shallot and yellow onion. In this case, we're just going to take the yellow onion, julienne half of it into very thin strips, and then cut the second half of it into these really, really thin, small dice. You're going to see how we cook it afterwards. So your woman has this emotional state, and she has to reconcile it. Therefore, you've never taken her out. And in her mind, this is 100% true, and nothing you say will change that. At least nothing you say overtly. If you'll notice, when you're cutting anything leafy like an herb or this kind of stuff, you want to roll them together and then give them a quick slice like this. It makes your job so much easier. Now, if you don't believe me that her emotional state drives a lot of her understanding, think back to every fight you had over some detail where you absolutely knew that you were right. The more you pointed out how irrational and dishonest she was, the more she took it to mean that you're invalidating her feelings. So both of you get mad, both of you shout, go to separate rooms, and not have sex. How awesome is that? So instead, as an alternative, you take that high energy, emotional investment that she's throwing at you, and you use it with her language, the way she converses, in order to establish a few things. 1, that this conversation is absurd. 2, that her emotional state is valid, even if it's not true. 3, that you're the oak who can take a few emotions and turn it into this loving situation and have a girl that melts into your arms. And 4, that you're not going out to dinner tonight. What you are doing is you're dicing this very small pieces. The idea is you want it to caramelize fairly quickly in a nice quick deep fry session here. So in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to agree with her. Yeah, I never take you out for dinner. And you're going to amplify that. In fact, dinner this month, we're only going to eat fat-free water. You agree with her. You're right, I've always been selfish. And you amplify. In fact, I've cleaned out your bank account and slept with your sister today. Put a pin in that for a minute. You want to add half part sweet soy, a half part dark soy. You're going to love this, by the way, because it adds a very nutty, earthy flavor to it. And then half a part of sesame oil. The recipe originally calls for like a tablespoon of sugar, or 1 part sugar. I like to claw that back to a half too. And then you're going to add 5 parts of that hot water used for boiling your noodles. What you're doing now, when you're agreeing and amplifying, it's called subcommunication. You're delivering these lines in an over-the-top manner that makes them categorically absurd. Of course you're lying. You know you're lying. She knows you're lying. And you make it sure it's obvious that she knows you know you're lying. The subtext here is that she is being irrational and crazy, and you're calling her out, without treating her emotional state as invalid. What I'm doing here is called a dry fry. The idea is you're removing the moisture from these things without blanching them, steaming them, or any type of water cooking method. You just want to stir them around in a completely dry pan until they start to wilt and turn a bit darker. Put them aside on a plate. You're going to do the same thing with some ginger. There we go. And this is the same part here with some bok choy. Now afterwards, what we're going to do is add a healthy dose of a high smoke point oil. And we're going to almost deep fry the very thinly sliced and chopped onions. The idea here is you want them to caramelize and you want to bring out their sweetness. And then we're going to separate the oil from the onions. And we're going to cook the rest of this dish. So if you're agreeing and amplifying properly, it's going to give her pause. It's going to let her walk back from that edge of crazy and realize that she got a little worked up. It may take a few more jabs from her side until she gets the point, but eventually she will get the point. You're not going to take her bait. You're not going to indulge her temporary insanity as you think it. But at the same time, you're going to be fun. You're going to be charming and playful. You're also going to decide you're not putting up with this nonsense. Now, you may not think it. She may not think it. But this is a fairly attractive display of value on your part. Women love having an emotional anchor to keep them from spinning out of control. You are the oak. Now, if you want to read more on this, there's 2 authors I'd strongly suggest. One, Dr. Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and Manuel Smith, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. Great resources for this stuff. There's also the Married Red Pill on Reddit, where they talk about it a lot. At this point, we're going to finish up the frying. You're putting that oil aside. You're just going to coat the pan with a thin layer. The only thing you want to do with these onions is you just want them translucent to take that raw edge off. The idea is this is going to insert a bit of freshness and good bitterness into your dish, while the other ones that you cooked well through are going to have a slight sweetness to it. It's subtle, but you'll notice the difference. At this point, we've gone over the purpose of Agree and Amplify, a couple basic decisions on how to use it, and some books that you could look into for some further understanding of the concepts. I want to give a shout out to everybody on Patreon here. You guys make this all possible, and throwing out a lot of love at you guys. What you're going to notice here, and this is a little extra I like to do, you take the bok choy and ground beef and you just put it together, you heat it up, put it aside. Add that sauce you made earlier, and you want to heat it up. You don't want to boil it. The idea is that you're like medium heat right now, and then you add the noodles, which are going to absorb a lot of that liquid, and then they're going to start pulling apart. Stir it fairly vigorously with some chopsticks, and add the rest of ingredients. Mix everything thoroughly, and then once the liquid is fully absorbed, you plate it up. You're going to see my horrible attempt here at trying to lay out the noodles restaurant style, where you drape them across like you do the best you can. You're going to eat it yourself. And then once you're done, you clean up the plate, put on top of it your vegetables and your meats, and then serve. Bon appetit. Back to the thanks. Want to give a shout out to Delicious Tacos for a wonderful book. Got me a little on the hungry side just reading it. Groundshark Coffee. They're the ones that give me that caffeine fix that get through this entire video without passing out. And Tactical Soap. With my nice, clean, manly smelling hands, lets me make this dish without feeling, too femmy. Finally, if you get a chance, check me out on the Red Man group Saturday mornings, along with Red Mornings, podcast I do with Carl from Black Label Logic, where we generally have discussions on these kind of sexual strategies, swapping notes and talking about our experiences and the things that we learn and the mistakes we've made. It's always a good time. Man, that looks good. And then on a final note, if you're having problems in your relationship, I've also got my male action plan, a consulting service I do. Or maybe you have your things 90% on check, but you maybe have one problem you kind of want to ping off of somebody who's going to be honest with you. I've also got these one-off consulting services. So, link to all of that's in the description. Have some noodles. Enjoy yourself. Cheers, all.